Hello, I am Ren Michaelis, and with me I have my friend Ben.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Rin. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? And I am going to put the
Hello, everybody. Hello, Rin. How are
I'm
you? Oh,
going
I
to
can
put
hear my
a
echo.
yeah. That's because I had to manually go to my channel. I mean, this isn't as easy as Google Hangouts.
Hmm.
So I had to manually go to my channel. I'm going to put the link out. You could talk. I'll put the link out.
No problem. What I'll do is I will go while you're doing that. I will go to your channel. I'll share the video, Rin, because so that people can see it. Because I'll share it around my social media networks. Um, it's been a while since we did a show. Here we are. Yeah, hot tanky takes. I like that. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I call it real Orpo hot tanky takes.
Yeah,
And
because
oh,
so
go
carry
ahead.
on. I was going to say I could talk a lot about this because I haven't followed all your debates with Chauncey, but I know you've been head to toe with a socialist of some kind.
Yeah, I mean, took a bunch of screenshots of the hot takes I received, and I am going to screen share because I created a new Tumblr. I just find Tumblr easier for use, especially since Tumblr is great for pictures. Like Tumblr is actually really great for pictures and screenshots. Let me use screen share. Oh, there it is. I can't find the screen share button.
I don't know how it works, unfortunately. I mean, it's as you said, Google Hangouts was way head and shoulders over StreamYard, and I wish they'd replace it with something.
Yeah, the Google Hangouts was a lot easier. Okay, can you
Ah,
see,
great.
see my screen?
Yes, I can. I can see. It's Twitter. Yeah, this is one of your Twitter things. Yeah. Which country's better? 47% say China, 53% say the USA. And
Yeah,
who's
because he's Leonardo, or I don't know how to pronounce that. It's
Leandro? I think it is.
Leandro Anarchy, and it's like look at all, and what's that, almost 4,000 votes, almost 4,000.
Mm.
So he has a lot of brainwash, brainwash people following him, and it's like BLM, ACAP, all cops are bastards,
Yeah, I
and
mean, how many of these people have actually been to China? Not just been to China, but seen what a lot of because China varies. China's a huge country; it's about the size of the United States, and it has a massive population. A quarter of the people in the world live in China, and different areas have different things. For example, if you go to the west into the desert, you'll find where the Uyghur people live. You'll find there's actually a horrible situation where they are being mistreated um, by the government. Exactly, they did with Tibet when they invaded Tibet and conquered it.
yeah. I also have a, let's see. Oh, no, let me scroll down. Let me scroll down. So somebody responded to this person, Joey. China by far, there are inequities in America, but China's human rights and equity record is far worse. And he says, no, the US is Oh my goodness. No, the US is the worst on both of them, human rights and equality. And it's like, oh my goodness, what's wrong with kids today? This kid is like 17, so like, do not harass this kid. He's 17 years old, but still like, I feel bad for these Zoomers. It's like, why do Zoomers want to be like socialist and communist?
Oh, it's dismaying to see that. I mean, this guy Leandro, he has an anarcho-syndicalist flag behind him. That's the black and red, just dissected. The Antifa fly a lot of those, and is he 17? Because it doesn't surprise me because 17-year-olds are idiots. I was 17 and I was an idiot, and I could tell you a lot about what I was like back then because I have kind of personal experience about this because I was sympathetic to socialism when I was young.
Same thing. When I was like 17 and 18 years old, I went around calling myself a communist. And then, like I found like Vernaculous's channel. Then he deleted his channel and, revamped his channel. But when I found Vernaculus, it got me out of, socialism and communism. It's because my school didn't do a good job. The school system didn't do a good job addressing it.
Yeah, I mean, this is insane saying that the US has a worse human rights record than China. This is incredible. I mean, it's insane that they would say that. Sure, the United States is not perfect, but when it comes to human rights, actually, the United States is very, very high up in the list of nations. It's near the top. You should be proud. I know people complain about it, and US has its problems. So does my country, Great Britain. But compared to the rest of the world, it's very, very much better. And people. This is one of the reasons we have immigration, is because people want to come here because of our both the United States and Britain, because of our superior human rights record. That's why we have it. This is nuts. This
Yeah,
is
like
absolutely crazy.
yeah, think about all of the people who want to come to America. Now think about all of the people who want to go to China. I mean, sure, like okay, like back in the day, like back when I was in elementary school, like I did have, like well, not a teacher, but she was the friend of the teacher, and she like went to the Great Wall of China, and she wanted to talk to all of the students about the wonders of the Great Wall of China. But it's like it was like tourism. She's just there for tourism. It's not, it's
Mm.
the place to just visit, but not live because they do have like interesting things in China, like the Great Wall. Nowadays, or I don't know when it's there, when they put it there, but they have this bridge and it has like a fake crack that scares tourists. Like when
Mm.
you are a tourist and you step on this glass bridge, it cracks, and then you can see a bunch of tourists freaking out and getting scared when really it's a fake crack. Like I don't know how they did it, but
Mm.
they did it.
I've seen that. Yeah, it's quite amazing. I mean, I know people have been to China. My own brother has been to China, and it's a really nice place to visit. It has China's. As I say, United States is not perfect, but China is not completely bad either. China is because becoming in economic terms, it is expanding enormously in economic terms. People who go there say it's really great. They have it's very modern. They have like high speed railways and things like that. And I know someone who lives there. Actually, he's an American called Raza. He lives there, and he's working on like science. He's doing like a kind of science in China, and he's an engineer and he's a scientist. And he says that they're way ahead of the rest of the world when it comes to science and technology. But sorry, go on, Rid.
No, I was just thinking, I mean, like back when I was a kid, I'm a millennial. I'm a millennial. And, back when I was, like a small child, my grandmother would say, like, eat short plate because there are starving people in China. And it's amazing how, like, it never ceases to, amaze me and surprise me, like how, like, me at, like, me, small child, and my grandmother's like, eat your plate because there are starving people in China. And China was always seen as like this backwards country, but now they're way ahead of like they're just like way ahead of the rest of the world in some
Yeah.
ways. Like in some ways, they're like way
Mm.
ahead of us in some ways.
In politics, in terms of economics and technology and science, yes. But I mean, you could say the same for the Gulf states, places like the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia. These countries have a very high standard of living. They have an infrastructure which is superior in many ways to that of Europe and North America. Yet they're theocracies, they're theocratic hellholes. China is a one-party state. The Chinese Communist Party has been in control of the entire country since 1949, and there's never been free elections allowed there. And there have been starving people. You see, my parents said exactly the same thing to me as they did to you, except they said Ethiopia. They didn't say China because there was
Ethiopia.
Ethiopia because there was a big famine in when I was a child. I think I'm a little bit older than you. When I was a child, this was in the 80s. there was a big famine in Ethiopia where several million people died of starvation, and there was a huge. That's when they had Live Aid. Remember Bob Geldof and Live Aid, and that was done basically to try and alleviate that famine. And people said, "Oh, there's people starving in that country." So I said, "Okay, I'll eat up. Because be grateful for the food I had." But China has been through periods of terrible famine. I mean, there was what Mao Zedong, the first communist leader, called. He called it the Great Leap Forward. After they won the Civil War in 1949 and they beat the Kuomintang, that is the Chinese, the capitalists, the pro-Western side, the capitalists, they instituted what he called it the Great Leap Forward. But what it meant was nationalizing all the farmlands and things like that, and it resulted in mass starvation. And no one knows exactly how many people died, but it was possibly as many as 100 million. It's one of the worst crimes ever committed in terms of human rights abuses. All the farmland was seized from the peasants in exactly the same way Stalin did in Ukraine, exactly the same that Ramaphosa is doing in South Africa today.
Speaking of Stalin, I mean, it reminds me, like, like another screenshot I took, and this is like the USSR under Lenin and Stalin was states capitalist, my guy. Lenin even admitted as much. Read it, dearie, please. So he's basically saying that, Stalin is not a communist, or Stalin and Lenin are not real communists, because Russia was a capitalist society.
This is what you hear over and over again. I'll give you a little bit of background to myself, because when I was 18 years old, I became a trade unionist. I started work at the hospital as a hospital porter. I very quickly got involved in trade unionism, and this includes various sort of Marxist splinter groups. There was within my union branch, there were people like the Socialist Workers' Party and the Militant Tendency. There were lots of that. That's part of the Labour Party. It used to be part of the Labour Party, which it was actually in government, but they were like a far left tendency of that party. And I quickly got sucked into the militant side of things. I heard this all the time, right? They said because the history of socialism is very interesting. It's been tried out many times, and for the longest period, certainly in Russia and in China, it was the longest periods. It's never succeeded. It's always floundered in the end and been replaced by something else. In some cases, it is a kind of capitalism, which has a free and a democratic capitalism, which has always proved to be quite healthy, or some kind of horrible fascist dictatorship. But either way, it has failed. And every time it fails, the proponents of socialism will say, well, it's failed because of, and they'll come up with some reason that means socialism itself is not to blame.
Yes.
In the case of the USSR, they all used to say this. They say, well, the revolution was great. Lenin and Trotsky and everyone, they ran the revolution and it was really great. But then Russia became isolated. It had the Civil War, which devastated it. In Germany, the communists in Germany, Rosa Luxemburg, now they couldn't take power. So Russia was isolated. It became a bureaucracy. It became deformed. Stalin took over and everything went downhill. But then you get the Tankies who say things like, oh, no, Stalin was good. Stalin was a good guy. He wanted socialism in one country. And you can have socialism in one country. And there's always some reason, though, why the theory behind it is not wrong. It's just the circumstances it was put in. And every time socialism fails, this happens. And that includes the modern, socialism in the USSR failed. Gorbachev tried to reform it and couldn't. So the entire system collapsed and the modern Russian Federation emerged. In China, it slowly reformed away from the original Maoist regime. China has, believe it or not, China has become more liberal than it used to be. I know it's got a long way to go, as we've been saying, but it is improving slowly, despite the horrors that are going on there at the moment with the Uyghur people and that. And it's so that nominally it's still a socialist country. The Communist Party of China, still one party state. This constitutionally rules without any other permission, any other free elections to remove it. But it's basically, ironically, become one of the world's biggest capitalist powers at the same time. So
yeah, they do have state capitalism.
Same with Vietnam and Laos, and these places in Indochina where socialism triumphed. Originally it appears socialism triumphed because In Vietnam, there was a terrible war that was fought over first with the French and then with the United States. And of course, I'm sure people in America today are still, have this terrible burden of old people who fought in that war and were injured and mentally and physically, and eventually the North Vietnamese, the Viet Cong, and then they won. And Vietnam, though, is like China. It's become like a major, as I say, state capitalist power. I mean, Chauncey, that young lady you were debating with, has been there.
Yeah, and I have a bunch of screenshots. Let me go up here. Oh, here's another one. There is no honest person in the United States or Western Europe who would rather live where they live and have the life that they have over having a chance to have lived in Soviet Union or China or Cuba or Venezuela right now. So he's saying that I would rather live in Cuba, Venezuela. I mean, who wants to even many socialists and communists would go, that's not real socialism. Like how many socialists are like Venezuela isn't real socialism. And I mean, there are even social democrats, not social democrats, but yeah, social democrats are like, oh, that's not real socialism. Like, man, like, when you're trying to look at socialism, you're looking at Venezuela. It's like not real socialism. And it's kind of like people are trying to always protect socialism, but that's not real socialism, even though, like, Wikipedia and Google, I would say Google leans left. And even though like Google leans left, they would go like, that's not real socialism, even though like Google something that leans stuff would be like, no, that is a socialist country. And so, but it's like, he's saying that most Americans this is what how I'm interpreting it, that most Americans want to live in the Soviet Union, China, Cuba, or Venezuela.
It's like, it's very often, I mean, members of Western communist parties, I mean, like they say this, and they very often, a lot of them, I mean, I've read a book by a guy called David Aronovich, who he's a journalist here in Britain, and he grew up in a family where they were all members of the Communist Party of Great Britain, and they've loved the Soviet Union. They wanted to go there all the time, and they used to go on holidays to the Soviet Union and other socialist countries, and they said it's wonderful, it's wonderful. What they didn't know was that the government under Stalin and Khrushchev, they used to have like places where special places they show the visitors, which were better than the countries at large. What you might call, it's almost like a theme park or showcase area, where they're superior. It's better than the world at large. North Korea does that today. You can go on holiday to North Korea. It's quite cheap, and people say it's quite nice. But they don't see the real country. They see the bits the government want you to see, because you can't just go backpacking in these places. You have to go on organised tours. And after the organised tours that Aronovich's family went on, they came back to Britain with seeing the whole system, the Soviet system, through rose-tinted glasses. It wasn't like that. This is the thing. I mean, I don't think the people who say things like that really understand what they're talking about. If they actually really lived there, they went there and they lived there, not just went to visit, but actually lived there, it would be different. And I think I'm more likely to trust the judgments of people who have lived there, and people from my country and who've gone and lived there. For example, the spy George Blake. Now, George Blake was a famous spy. He converted to socialism. He ended up spying for the Russians. He was in the Foreign Intelligence Service, MI6, here in Britain. Most notorious spy of all. He was arrested. He was put in jail in 1966. He was broken out of jail, and he fled to Russia, where he was given political asylum. He's still there today. He's very old. He's almost 100, but he's still there. He wrote in his book called No Other Choice that when he got to Russia, he was expecting it to be a land flowing with milk and honey, the good old Soviet Union, like in that film, the Ealing comedies, they say, Russia, lying in the fields, working the fields for 6 hours or so, drinking vodka, then in the evening it's ballet, but it wasn't. He says he then found he had to queue for a loaf of bread for half an hour every time. The bread cost more than a bottle of vodka. Fresh fruit and vegetables, forget it. I mean, a lot of it has to be imported. They're extremely expensive. Most Russians, you said, they were really thin and starving because they didn't eat enough. They used to carry shopping bags wherever they went, just in case a shop happened to have something, because you couldn't just go shopping whenever you liked. You had to always be prepared to just, oh God, the shops, it's got something. There's no queue. Get in there quick. So the Russians have this bag. It's called a just in case bag. So everywhere a Russian goes, you'll see them carrying shopping bags, just in case. It's ridiculous. It's a horrible place. He said it's a horrible place, but he can't leave, because if he leaves, he'll be arrested. He'll be arrested and put back in jail. So I'm willing to. I'm going to judge. I'm going to take the judgment of George Blake, right? Because he went there. He's lived there. He's lived there for 54 years, and he says it's a horrible place. And I think he regrets what he did.
Yeah, and let's see. I don't think I covered that one yet. Oh, yeah. It just looks weird on my end because I only see. I had to click on the photo to show both photos. But anyway, let's start with photo one. Okay, we objectively kill more people globally by a factor of 20-ish times when compared to the gulags. So this person is defending the gulags, like that's what's it, Clancy person?
Chauncey.
Chauncey.
Yeah, it's Chauncey. I did a bit of background research into that lady. Yeah. But is this Chauncey talking now?
No, this is American outcome. American outcome. So authoritarian communist. So this person is actually bragging about being an authoritarian communist. Okay.
Right. Yeah, that's the definition. That's the ultimate tankie. That is. Yeah.
Yeah, we objectively kill more people globally by a factor of 20 times when compared to the gulags without bringing race into it. So defending the gulags. Some of the people in the gulags were really kulaks, 50 capitalists who literally hoarded while the people starved. Those kulaks deserved it. Many other people did not. They were political dissidents. So I mean, this person is defending sending capitalists to the gulags.
Oh, this is crazy. This is now. We killed by a factor of 20 times more people than the gulags. I mean, who do they mean by we? Do they mean the United States? Do they mean the Western world? In what way do we kill people? I mean, it's if they're blaming, I think this person may be possibly trying to blame every single bad thing in the world that happens in the world on the United States. For example, if a famine breaks out somewhere, it's because of third world depression and America's at the top of that, or something like that, which is not a fair comparison. Now, the kulaks were actually Ukrainian farmers. They weren't filthy capitalists. They were actually freeholder farmers. So they actually owned land in Ukraine, and they were using it to create some of the most productive farmland in the world, which meant that Russia was not only could feed itself, it could export its food abroad. It's rather like South Africa today. I mean, the Boers are not filthy capitalists. They are freeholder farmers who, again, have turned South Africa into a massive food exporter. And what Stalin did was he nationalized the land, he collectivized it, and the people who owned it, who basically, this is what he says here: the kulaks owned it, and then you get like the Holodomor, which is the mass starvation of Ukrainian people. I don't remember all the details. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. I mean, you know more than I do. But it's kind of a lot like the kulaks, the filthy capitalists deserve to go to the gulag. I mean, it's like this person is justifying throwing people into the gulag. And I mean, at the end of the day, when they say we kill more people, well, they call themselves American authoritarian communists. So by we, I think she, I don't know he or she, but I would assume that this person is talking about America.
Yeah, but you see, that's really false. That is completely false. America does not kill more people by a factor of 20 times compared to the gulags. Firstly, we don't know exactly how many people died in the gulags. There's no real figures. Khrushchev, actually, when he took over from Stalin, he did an awful lot to cover it up. He actually, a lot of documents were destroyed. A lot of people's birth certificates and death certificates were destroyed. This is why you get lots of people in Russia today still trying to find out what happened to their grandfathers and grandmothers under Stalin. And Khrushchev tried to give the Soviet Union a new image after he took over from Stalin. But it was millions of people, millions. It was many millions of people killed in the Gulag system, in the labor camps. I mean, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who actually was the Russian intellectual who was in those camps. In his book, The Gulag Archipelago, he describes it, and he is, despite what some people say, he is backed up by historical evidence and things like that. They didn't completely bury the past. There's a lot of people talking about similar experiences. It was horrible being in the gulags. It was like a prison. In some of the worst places in the world, in the subarctic climate of northern Siberia, which is horrible. I mean, it's literally freezing cold for about 8 months of the year. Then you get a little bit of rain and sun, and then it gets cold again. And most people just died after a few years.
Yeah, I'll continue. Famine killed more people in the USSR than gulags did. I don't know if you wanted to come back.
Right. Again, we don't have figures for what happened, how many people died in the gulags, like I said. Famine did kill people in the USSR. A lot of it was because of this collectivization that Stalin imposed on places such as Ukraine. It was literally caused by government policy, this famine, as it was in China with the Great Leap Forward. Mao Zedong's government that took over, won the Civil War in 1949 and took over. They imposed they imposed a regime which killed people. If they just left the farmland in private hands, and they just allowed the people who know what's best, know how to do it best, to own the land and run the land properly, it wouldn't have happened. There's enough land. I mean, China, I know it has a huge population, but it's a big country. Same with Russia, is enormous. Russia's the biggest country in the world. It could feed the world, let alone itself. Why couldn't they just use that land properly, and it wouldn't have happened? Again, I don't have all the details on this. I'm just going with what I've heard.
You know more about this than I do. Yeah, sorry I can't contribute more, but I don't, like, again, like when I was 18, I called myself a communist, and I did that because we didn't really go over at school. Like, my teacher pretty much just said, if you believe in equality, then you are a communist. So it's like, well, I do believe in equality, so I guess I'm a communist. And it's like, then I learned more about communism, and it's like, oh, well, I'm not a communist then.
You see, this is what I mean. You were at school when you had these thoughts. I was just out of school. I was like 18 years old when I had these thoughts, and it's understandable. It's completely understandable, because we live in a world where there's a lot of there's inequity, there's injustice, and there's cruelty on a huge scale, and socialism provides a very simple and obvious explanation for what's wrong with the world, and a simple and obvious solution, which I think, especially to the immature mind, is very appealing and it's very alluring. Now, I'm sorry. I mean, I know there's older people who are communists, and I don't mean to denigrate those people, but the fact that people say it is something you grow out of, there is some truth to that. A lot of people say, I grew out of it, and I suppose I did. I mean, to be honest, I saw through it quite quickly. I think I was hardcore probably for less than a year before I began to have my doubts about it. And I didn't sort of like just tear up my party card and walk out. It wasn't like that. I slowly drifted away from it. It was a long process, but within a space of another, a little bit longer, I just stopped going to meetings and things like that. And in the end, I looked at myself one day in the mirror, and I think I'm not involved anymore. I'm not a socialist anymore. There are other solutions to the to the bad things in this world. We can improve the world. We can make a happier world with a higher standard of living. But socialism, I don't think, is the way.
Yeah, I don't think it's the way either. The USSR splits up and therefore is no longer able to rack up kills like Americans. It's just worth noting that we kill more by negligence than Stalin did on purpose if we go year to year.
This is. I don't quite. I'm not sure I quite understand that. Hang on. The USSR split up and therefore is no longer able to rack up kills like America. I don't know specifically what that means, but it's noting that we, meaning Americans, I suppose, kill more by negligence than Stalin did on purpose. Well, killing by negligence is. I suppose you could say that what Mao and Stalin did was a form of negligence. I don't know if it was mass murder. Some people claim that they deliberately wanted to kill off the kulaks and things like that. I mean, they did lock them up and did execute a lot of them. But it just seems culpable. Culpable negligence is. I suppose you get to the point where you're so negligent that you know what you're doing is bad, even if you say, "Well, I'm not trying to commit murder here. I'm not actually actively trying to murder these people, but what I'm doing, I know, is going to cause the deaths of lots of people." It's almost as bad as murdering. It's almost as bad. And yeah, people get killed by negligence. You get people on there's building sites that don't have proper health and safety precautions, and builders get killed. You get guys on oil rigs get killed. There's all kinds of dangerous jobs in the world: firefighter, soldier. And things like that, yeah. And people go and fight forest fires and they get burnt. Yeah, that happens, but it's not. I don't believe that the American system or the British system is actually doing this on anything like the scale that Mao and Stalin did. I mean, well, the Soviet Union generally and China generally, but under those regimes specifically, it was particularly bad, I think, by the look of things. Although people can correct me if I'm wrong. Hello, David. David's in chat. Hi, David.
I can't see David right now because
Oh,
I think I know which David. I think I know which David. I hope it. I think it's my friend David on Twitter. He's from Spain.
no,
He's not from.
it's a guy I know actually. He actually lives here in England. He's David UK Splendid Isolation.
Oh,
Can you not see him in the comments tab? Click the comments tab. You should be able to see him.
Oh, I had to stop screen share then.
Okay.
We could, yeah. Let me.
I can read you what he's saying. I can read you or you can see what he's saying here.
Russia killed its own people. Zimbabwe also brings to mind, and now we burn in the caps. Yeah, like I couldn't see him because I was in a different window, and I didn't know if it was my friend David from Spain. And I was gonna speak a little bit Spanish, just like mi amiga, but it's like it's like.
Yeah, David.
Friend and not my friend. Oh, but hey, David, UK SBL. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's good he's here again. But he said Zimbabwe springs to mind. Zimbabwe is a sad case actually because Zimbabwe had it's typical of the situation because it had it had an unjust social structure. It was rather like South Africa under apartheid, and it was dismantled in favour of basically a socialist regime run by Robert Mugabe, who was a horrible man. Absolutely, he was a horrible individual, and as a result, they actually expelled a lot of the farmers. A lot of people got killed, and the country went into a very, very sharp decline. The currency crashed financially; it was completely destroyed. The collectivized farms couldn't produce what the original farms did, and people became very poor in Zimbabwe. About a quarter of the people in Zimbabwe left the country. Including nearly all the white people. The white people were blamed, of course, for everything that went wrong, and most of them had to go. A lot of them were expelled. Some left of their own accord. Under Mugabe, the first thing Robert Mugabe did actually when he took power, this compassionate socialist, was he settled a tribal score because Zimbabwe is divided into two original countries. There was Southern Rhodesia and I can't remember the name of the others. Southern Rhodesia is today called Matabeleland, and is a province of Zimbabwe. the Mashona, that is the tribe of whom Robert Mugabe is a member. He's actually descended from an emperor, from a Mashona emperor. Sent the army into Matabele land and basically killed everyone. They locked people in their houses and set fire to them.
Ew.
That's what he did in 1981 when he took power. He tried to exterminate the Matabele people. That's socialism for you. That's, well, I mean, obviously not just socialists do that. Obviously fascists and do that as well. But that's what authoritarians do when they take power. When they have no accountability to the people, and they have some kind of, when you give them any kind of dictatorship, even a dictatorship of the proletariat, to quote Karl Marx and Lenin, that's what they do. They use that power for their own personal gain and their own personal, and settle personal scores and things like that. Yeah, horrible, man. I'm glad he's dead. Good riddance to him.
Oh, sorry for not responding. You were like breaking up on me. Like I knew that you're still talking, but I didn't hear, like, I didn't really catch the ending.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying that I just said that if you give people power, whether it's fascists or communists, they will, and you have no accountability to the people through any kind of democratic process or any kind of noblesse oblige of any kind. Because I know not everyone thinks democracy is a good idea, but they have to have some kind of accountability, some kind of noblesse oblige, some kind of duty. And if you take that away, if you get someone like Mugabe, they'll just use their power to commit atrocity on a huge scale.
Yeah, and that should, let me go back to screen share some, finish up that hot take. Let's see, no one deserves slavery. Some number of people, though admittedly probably not the majority of people in the gulags, fucking deserved it. These things are not equal ways to compare. This is where that almost certainly pales as all fuck Tankie is coming from.
This person sounds very angry. Lots of swearing and that, but the
gulags fucking deserved it.
The Kulaks, from what I've seen, the Kulaks were simply freeholder farmers. That's all they were. They were peasants under the aristocratic system of the Russian Empire, and they lived in Ukraine, and they created a very prosperous farming economy. I think there's this kind of idea that that when there's inequality in society, where some people are richer and some people are poorer, it's because something's gone wrong. Because there must be some kind of pathology involved, that some people are richer and some people are poorer, whereas very often it's not. It's just a natural way that things fall into place. It doesn't mean I believe you could have a world without poverty. I think you could have a world without poverty. I think poverty can be eliminated, but what cannot be eliminated is natural inequality. I think you could have a world without poor people. I think you could possibly have a world where there are rich people and less rich people. But I don't think it's going to happen through socialism. Socialism does not, as it seems from so far, from the chances it's given. It's had numerous chances now. It doesn't seem to do anything other than cause economic stagnation and collapse, and eventually it just falls apart and it's replaced.
Ew. Okay, let me go to my other screenshots. I do empathize more accurately. You have probably seen someone who ostensibly agrees with you, takes some very ill-informed reactionary position in response to actions or lines, discourse the right takes. That's what I'm experiencing here. America bad, slavery bad, capitalism why, gulags were for capitalists, gulags less bad. America glass house throwing stones is often their position. To put it in goblins speak. What does that mean?
I think this is America Orthcom doing it again. Right, America Orthcom is, what did he say? I find it hard sometimes to understand what this person's saying. I don't understand the first paragraph at all. America.
I was wondering, it is American outcome, which is authoritarian communist, and it's kind of like I was wondering if you understood what this person means when he says or she says whatever. I don't know what's they are, male or female. Well, when they say to put it in goblin speak.
Yeah, goblin speak. I don't understand. I think it may mean, I don't know, sort of what this person just gives a list of 2-word sentences here: America bad, slavery bad, capitalism why. Um, well, I mean, firstly, they talk about someone agreeing with you takes some ill-informed reactionary position in response to actions or lines of discourse. I don't know what they mean exactly by that, but America bad. America's not bad. Slavery, of course, is bad because slavery is a breach of human rights. Capitalism, why? No question mark. Well, capitalism, despite the way it's portrayed, does seem to do a lot of good. I mean, I'm getting more into the kind of I've become more libertarian capitalist actually since I stopped being a socialist. I very quickly became something of a libertarian capitalist. Um, Capitalism there's inequalities in capitalism. Like there were owners of the means of production, which Karl Marx said that the workers had to take control of. But an owner of the means of production, it's in their interest to have healthy, happy people employed by them. So this is why the Victorian mills eventually, it's true, it was the trade union movement actually assisted with this. And I mean, the trade union movement has done some good things. But we don't get like little kids going to work in factories now. Little kids now have proper childhoods and things like that. But gulags were for capitalists. No, gulags were for dissidents. The thing is, capitalists. Let me just see. Gulags were for capitalists, but a capitalist under that system was anyone who didn't agree with the government, who didn't agree with the Bolshevik Soviet system. It's I read. I've read a book called We the Living by Ayn Rand. I don't know if you've ever read that.
No, I heard that Ayn Rand's work is really long because a person, you know, like people would hold up, you know, like Atlas struggled or something, and it's like a huge like tome. It looks like it's like 1,000 pages long, and it's like I know I'm not going to finish a book that's 1,000
Well,
pages.
you know the old joke about Ayn Rand. You know the old joke is, oh, reading Ayn Rand changed my life. I developed chronic backache carrying Atlas Shrugged home from the library. It's yeah, Atlas Shrugged. I've got it on my shelf. I've got it over there. Actually, you won't even be able to see it. It's on my pile there. It's a huge book, and she wrote another one even almost as long called The Fountainhead. But her first novel called We the Living is much shorter, and it's kind of it's like a crypto autobiographical novel because it's about a young girl who's living in Russia just after the Russian Civil War, and it describes the place where they live, where everyone's eating sunflower seeds because there's nothing else to eat, and so the family are treated really badly because they don't agree with the government. And so when they say gulags were for capitalists, what I think they mean is gulags were there for people who would not cooperate with the Soviet system, with the new system. So under that system, there's nothing you can do. You can't tolerate dissent. So you have to put them away. You have to put them away somewhere where they can't do any harm to the regime. So the gulags were for people who simply did that. They were simply for people who were political prisoners. That's what they were, prisoners of conscience. So they weren't much different. I mean, lots of countries have done this, not just socialist ones. I mean, of course, Hitler had his camps. There was the concentration camps in South Africa, which were run by the British Empire. It's a common way of dealing with people who you simply won't cooperate in a very extreme situation. These people didn't do anything wrong. They were locked up for opposing the regime. And as for what? America glass house throwing stones. I don't quite get that bit. The phrase is where you're in a glass house throwing stones means that you break your house when you break the glass when you throw a stone outwards. I don't know exactly what they mean. And goblin speak, I don't understand. Sorry, I don't understand everything this person said.
Yeah, I just thought that maybe because you're like an ex-socialist or you are like an ex-communist, like maybe it's like a coded language that you could decode and
Well,
translate translate it to other people.
Well,
Um,
I've been out of that business a long time. I mean, it was literally something I I dabbled with when I was like 18. I mean, within a year, I was sort of moving away from it, and now well, I won't say exactly how many years have gone past since then, but many years have gone past since then, and I think the whole scene has moved on. I mean, I still do. You see, I still keep an interest in this sort of thing, though. I mean, I do. I read book. I've even got one here. Look, I'm reading this one at the moment, which is like a communist book. So I keep kind of looking at the scene to see what it's doing. I had to research it actually for the books I was writing recently. I wrote 3 books, but I don't recognize anything that this person's saying in terms of code. They're using quite abstract language here.
Yes, I thought that maybe you could translate, but if not, then I'll continue. Things are far more complicated than that. They frequently end up defending. I don't think I could say that on YouTube. Such as but you can see that word for yourself. I genuinely believe the capitalists or kulaks, as it was put, deserved it, which is creepy. It mirrors what they inflict upon their neighbors. I wouldn't say that we do that.
No. Can I just say that I mean, what did the kulaks actually do? I mean, that's not something that from Soviet state propaganda, but from what I gather, all they did was they were landowners, they were freehold farmers, like I said, and that's not in what I mean. Maybe they did fight some kind of civil war. I don't know. I don't know the history of Ukraine in detail. Maybe there's some Ukrainians who could tell me. But they must have been something pretty bad if they deserved all to be locked up and have their land stolen away from them by the government. And it just seems a little bit convenient because the government wanted to collectivize their land anyway. So it just seems a little bit like you paint someone, you smear somebody to get what you want from them, and so I'm inclined to think there's a conflict of interests here. So that's all I can say about what this person says there.
America genuinely kills more people than that. I'm not saying that word did. Hit Hitler would be better than America. It's like this person. I mean, I don't think I could say that word on YouTube. I know that's temple avoid saying that word, but to this person is a communist, and they're defending, this guy, that World War II German leader. It's like that person would be better than America by this logic too. It's like when a communist defends that World War II German leader whose name I cannot see on YouTube.
Mm. It's anyway. What it's is an over. Anyway, carry on, Ren. Sorry, yeah.
It's just an overly simplistic metric to judge governmental and economic models by.
I think if you're talking about like simply a head count of people, then of course I think all governments at some point have killed people deliberately. I mean, it's, for example, you could say that some aerial bombardment, like you see in World War II and the Vietnam War, could be defined as an atrocity. Of course, that was an atrocity in a sense. They were dropping bombs on innocent people in whether it was Germany or whether it was Vietnam. Yes, that was a terrible thing they did. But of course, Germany was dropping bombs on England, and Japan attacked Pearl Harbor and killed lots of people there. I mean, we get into a situation of whataboutism, so that it becomes, if we're going to have like a head count of corpses and decide everything that way, it's difficult to know what's right or wrong in that respect. What I do know is that in a system which wants to take over everything, the means of production, and put it under state control, supposedly for the benefit of the people, but it never turns out that way. It never works out that way. That to me is the metric I'm going to use.
Yeah, let's see. Let me use screen share again. Because I mean, I didn't put anything else on Tumblr. I just put, all of the things that I thought was the most shocking on Tumblr. But I had what I quickly had available. And I mean, this tweet. It did like far better than I imagined. I was expecting to get like only 5 likes or only 10 likes. I am surprised that it blew up the way that it did. Let's see. Frankly, Americans trying to say other countries did something as bad as slavery rings a bit hollow to me. The Gulag wasn't slavery, but go ahead and tell me what you think we should do if we're not allowed to re-educate and not allowed to. I'm less of us saying that word on YouTube because YouTube
Hmm.
might strike me down. Our enemies. It's like well, and it's like like it was like so like they said something so out there that even like anarchists, got involved and were like, no, we're against this. This person actually got called out by some people on the left too.
Oh,
And
this.
it's like I'm just surprised how much it blew up. I almost have 1,000 likes. I mean, it's kind of a lot. Like this would be, like if I could get a few more likes, it would be my very first tweet with 1,000 likes. If I could just get more likes, it would be like my very first tweet that I ever received 1,000 likes.
Well, congratulations, Rin, for getting that. Obviously, it's a bit of drama like this. You need to get up there, but I didn't follow every bit of your debate with Chauncey, but I do think you got the upper hand. Now, Chauncey, I'm wondering. I don't know exactly who Chauncey is, but she might be Chauncey Robinson, who is an official of the Communist Party of the United States of America. If you go to their website, this is what I meant about her going to Vietnam, because she does various videos here, like Marxism and Culture, Vietnam's Path to Socialism, and various other things here. So she's quite active on YouTube as well, if it is the same person. And I think this may be who you've managed to get yourself into an argument with. But she says, what did she say about? She says something about slavery and being as bad as slavery or something. What was it, Rin? She
Oh,
said.
let me scroll back up and put screen share back on again. It's that I went off it and I was just
No
trying to
worries.
see if there's anything I was looking to see if there's anything else in my bookmarks that are, me calling out communism. But here it is. Frankly, Americans trying to say other countries did something as bad as slavery rings a bit hollow to me. The Gulag wasn't slavery, but go ahead, tell me what you think we should do if we're not allowed to re-educate and not allowed to. Let's avoid that word, our enemies, because YouTube might get me in trouble.
Okay. The other countries did something as bad as slavery. Right, well, firstly, all countries have done slavery in their history. This goes back to what we were talking about previously when we were we were talking about the social justice warriors and things like this, and the Black Lives Matter people. Slavery is a sad fact as history, and America is not the only country in the world that did it by far. And the Gulag wasn't slavery. Why was the Gulag not slavery? People were sent to the Gulags as civic slaves. They didn't have a choice in the matter. It was like going to prison. It was exactly like prison. You could say they were convicted of non-crimes. A lot of them were not criminals in the sense that we would describe a criminal. They were simply expressing an opinion which ran contrary to what the regime needed people to say and think. And if we're not allowed to re-educate and that other
No,
word
no, no,
our
no, no,
enemies?
no, no,
Well,
no, 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 no. Let's avoid the E word,
oh, no, I wasn't going to say the word. Don't worry. But we're not allowed to re-educate. Can I say that? Re-educate.
Yeah, you can say re-educate, but the E word,
Right. I'll
YouTube
avoid the next
might
one.
nuke. Yeah, YouTube might nuke my channel with
Okay. Well, if we're not allowed to, well, re-education is just another word for indoctrination. It means what used to happen is you'd have you at the gulags, like everywhere else in the Soviet Union, you'd have to sit in front of a commissar, a political commissar, and they would teach you like Marxism, Leninism, and the history of the revolution and things like that. David says here, socialism is also the politics of envy. It resents and penalizes independent success. And I think that's very true. It's like they see as I said, the foundation is you see some people are better off than others. Some people have more than others, And that's obviously has to be because something's wrong. And very often, of course, there are things wrong with our society. But the solution socialism gives is to essentially redistribute those resources through state control, through the dictatorship of the proletariat. Karl Marx, who invented it, I mean, Karl Marx was just one of many socialists in the 19th century. There were many, many others. There was William Morris and people like that, and John Ruskin. A lot of it came out of England, actually, Rin. It seems to be the actual source of socialism, a lot of it. And they, again, you saw things like, if you ever read Charles Dickens and the things that he describes in his books, and the horrible lives a lot of people lived, where there was a tiny privileged elite which had lives of luxury, and you think to yourself, well, something's wrong there. Something needs to be fixed. And of course, I mean, you can't deny that's a bad thing. That's something that does need to be fixed. The solution that Karl Marx came up with was basically these factories that are owned by, and the production, that is the industry, which is owned by these people, these capitalists, this bourgeoisie. The problem could be solved if the workers, the proletariat as he called it, took over and started running them themselves, not for profit, but for the good of the people. So everything would be based on resource. It would be a resource-based economy rather than a profit-based economy. That's what he envisaged, and that therefore this inequality wouldn't happen, because the factories would start producing things for everybody. It would go from each according to his abilities to each according to his needs, was the catchphrase they used. And of course, it didn't work for various different reasons. It failed over the years, because of course Karl Marx was enormously influential, and he's one of the most influential people who ever lived. Yet every time people try to put his ideas into practice, something goes wrong. So
Yeah, it's like that's what I get. It's like each and every time people try to implement his ideas, something goes wrong. Yeah, have all of these Zoomers who are like, "I'm a communist now," and it's like you're a Zoomer. Like, what do you know? Like, grow up a little, I mean,
Yeah.
it's like if you get older, you'll understand, do a little bit more research. I mean, sure, not everybody grows out of it. There are people who are my age who are like, who support communism and socialism. But I figure if they just see the bad side instead of looking at the propaganda.
Yeah, I know some people, of course, never grow out of it. Some people, of course, cling on to this idea it can be implemented. Look at Bernie Sanders, who's now about 80 years old. He's believed this his whole life. But other people, I mean, it's understandable, these Zoomers. I mean, when these Zoomers say that, by the way, hello, Professor Platypus, hello, nice to see you. These Zoomers who say things like that, I'm a communist now, and of course, the recent survey said that the majority of Zoomers do describe themselves as communists, but they look very often they're just simply compassionate and sympathetic people who have a social conscience and who look at the world and see that there are a lot of things wrong with it. As I said before, there is inequity, there is injustice, and there is cruelty everywhere. And this hurts people. It hurts me, because unless you're one of these people who could just be a pseudo psychopath and go, well, I'm all right, Jack, sod the rest. You just can't live in that kind of world without having some idea, some vision, and some objective to changing it and making it better. That's completely understandable. The problem is it's just saying to the government, okay, we'll create this dictatorship of the proletariat, a workers' state, which will then take control of all the resources, steal, in other words, steal the property of people and redistribute it for their own good. And then when it's done that, the state will wither away. That was the phrase that Marx and Engels used. It would wither away, and we would have like communism. That's not the way forward. That is not the solution. It's understandable that people think it is, because it's simple, it's obvious, but it's not right, and it's not workable. It's unethical, and it's illogical. And hopefully, I just hope people do at some point realize that, the way I realized it. Luckily, I saw through it very quickly. Literally within a year, I'd seen through it. Other people, it takes longer. But good luck to them, I say. I'm not angry with communists. I don't resent them. I don't see them as evil people. They're not. Very often they're very nice people. In fact, there's as I said, they have sympathy. They have compassion when other people lack it. If you don't have those things, you wouldn't bother becoming a communist. You just want to look over. You want to just look after yourself and make sure you are the only one. You're the only one you care about. You don't care about the others. So I just say to them, look, I understand how you feel, but I used to feel as you do, but you're going the wrong way about it. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way, and it's like I'm trying to find other takes. I thought I saw some on Reddit, but it's kind of like I couldn't find what I was looking for.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, I've got friends who are communists. I have friends who describe themselves as Marxists and communists. I mean, I have people. I know people. I interact with people on the far left and the far right. I don't believe any of them are, or very few of them certainly are. I'd say are evil. They're just people with an idea and a thought, and they've made a mistake. That's how I see them. I suppose I'm a centrist because I've looked at both sides, and I've tried to entertain ideas without necessarily accepting them, as Sargon says.
Yeah, I would also describe myself as a centrist, and say, oh, here's another good one. Classicists are a good thing, and the classicide of the kulaks under Stalin's leadership in the Soviet Union, and the landlords classicide under Mao's leadership in China were morally rights, and they deserve it.
Well, this is correct. Classicide, I suppose, means the killing off.
Don't say the
I won't say the G
anything
word. I won't say
the
the
G word. Yeah, the G word that could hurt my
I won't say it.
child.
Don't worry. I won't say it. No, that's a completely different word. The G word refers to an ethnos, a culture or group of people in terms of ethnic. Classicide, I assume, means the extermination of a class of people. So, example, the Kulaks the Kulaks. This person is praising the classicide. I've never heard that word before, but I know what it means, of the Kulaks under Stalin's leadership. Because they're basically the whole class was bad. I mean, you see the same thing under Mao. I mean, have you seen Paul Joseph Watson's video about China? It's he did a video about China. He was comparing what happened after the Cultural Revolution to in China to what happened, what's happening with people being cancelled in our society. I think it's a bit more extreme. It was a bit more extreme in China, but I know what he means. But in what way did they deserve it? I mean, what did these people do? What did the kulaks actually do wrong? I mean, I'm not an expert in Ukrainian history, like I said. They opposed the Bolshevik takeover. They opposed the rise of the Soviet Union. Because Ukraine, of course, was a subject nation of the empire, and the Soviets took over from that. But all they, as far as I can see, they did was own land which they farmed. Maybe they had some kind of civil war. I don't know. I'm not sure. But what did they do which made them deserve to be killed? Every single one of them killed in this classicide. How could anyone do something which is so bad that they deserve that? I don't know what this person means. Leandro, the anarcho-syndicalist.
Yeah, but do not. This person is 17. I don't know if they're 18 yet. I don't know. They might be 18 by now, but at least in American terms, I think that in England they would be an adults in England standards, aren't they?
It depends. I mean, there's 16 to 18 is where you become adults in various different ways over here. But you can be adult and still have an immature mind. I was 18. Once I was 18, I was a fully mature adult in the eyes of the law. Yet I was a fool. I was not much different from Leandro, actually. I wasn't a Tankie, though. I was like the group I was with was kind of Trotskyist. The one I got close to. I mean, I wouldn't say I ever really joined them. I never really become seriously hardcore with them. I never really understood it until actually after I left. But they were Trotskyist, I would say, which is a different kind of socialism. In fact, it's ironic, socialists don't agree on things. Trotskyists and the Tankies, like the Stalinists, they hated each other. I mean, David Aronovich describes something that happened when he went to university, because he was in the CPGB, and he was flirting with this young woman at the freshers' fair at the university, and she slapped him around the face and called him a Stalinist, which of course is their word for like a Tankie, and she's a Trotskyist. she followed Leon. Leon Trotsky broke with the rest of the Soviet leadership and actually had to go into exile and was eventually murdered. In 1940, he was murdered at his hideout in Mexico by an agent of the Soviet Union. So there's this internal conflict. I mean, if the socialists ever took over the world, there'd probably be a nuclear war because one faction would kill off the other.
I would agree. I missed some things by Professor Platypus. Something goes wrong implies it's not intending to be chaotic. Let's see. Now he's talking to you, or he spoke to you when he said, "Yep, Ben, I was reading that." A willful transition from dictatorship to anarchy is a contrary to human nature. I agree with you, Professor Platypus. I mean, if you have a dictatorship, why would it's like if you have that much power, why on earth would you give up that power? That doesn't make any sense. Like once a person has power, there is no way in hell that they were ever going to give that power up.
No, I mean,
I've been reading Lenin, Trotsky, Engels, etc. the past 3 weeks. I know. Sargon seems to be summarizing Aristotle. The kulaks would be comparable to commercial farmers here, as opposed to peasants, substance farmers, murdered wood and ISATs, sensing messages, certainly.
Yeah, that's the last bit is referring to the way Trotsky was killed. He was at his hideout in Mexico, and someone he knew this person. I think this person kind of got close to him, and then went into the house one day with an ice axe and hacked him to death. That's how he died. That happened in Mexico City in 1940. Ever since then, of course, he has modern followers. A lot of the British communists are Trotskyists. But what he says here, the willful transition from dictatorship to anarchy is contrary to human nature. And I think that's true, actually. As we were explaining, you give people dictatorship like Robert Mugabe. Unfortunately, when it comes to dictatorships, the people who tend to become the dictators are the people who like being dictators. And the people who like being dictators are the ones who will not give it up. That's the problem, isn't it? And indeed, the Communist Manifesto describes the withering away of the state. Now, it's worth reading the Communist Manifesto, actually. You can get it anywhere. It's a very short book. You can read it in a couple of hours. It's one of the most widely read books on earth. It's one of the most influential books ever written. It was written by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, 1848, I think they published it. And it describes this withering away of the state. But it seems, like I said, for various reasons, it seems unlikely that would actually happen for all kinds of different reasons. Not least the one I just described and Professor Platypus describes. Sargon is Sargon of Akkad his work now is with a different form of Marxism, and that seems to be the cultural Marxism, which has been a lot more successful. For various reasons.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's like like you can't say okay, like these days you can't say women anymore. You got to say like people who menstruate, and you cannot just say like women anymore. You got to say like people with service. It's like it's kind of like this doesn't like make any sense. No help on my channel doesn't get nude for me saying that, because it's kind of like, I know that J.K. Rowling got a lot of shits. When she replied, it's like women who menstruate. People who menstruate. There is a word for that. How about women? Like, and it's like, but nowadays it's like it's controversial to talk about, and I probably risk putting my channel at risk of being nude. Probably. Well, fortunately, I'm small, and because I'm really, really small, it might, go under the radar. I might get lucky that I'm so small that I'm invisible and I don't have to worry about my channel. But it's like, like people who menstruate. It's like, there's the word for that. How about women?
Believe it or not, I mean, this is Sargon's particular peeve, isn't it? I mean, I started watching Sargon of Akkad quite a number of years ago. His peeve, the things he talks about, or however you describe them, what you've just described, like this redefinition of gender and things like that. Believe it or not, is connected to socialism. It's a very interesting story about how it came about, but maybe we can come on to that in a minute. But can I just go through some more of these comments here, because it's very interesting here, because Professor Platypus says the kulaks would be comparable to commercial farmers. That's right, as opposed to the peasant subsistence farmers. That's correct. They actually were land-owning farmers rather than land-rented farmers or serfs, because in Russia they had like different classes of farmers. Like there was the peasants who were like employed or were actually rented farmland. Then there was the serfs who were actually bonded to the land in a form of slavery. And then there was the landowner. There's the kulaks of Ukraine, and I think there was different forms of that in Russia, who were landowners. They actually were aristocratic farmers who owned the land. So as far as I know, they didn't actually do it. I don't think that if someone thinks that alone means they deserve to be put into gulags and killed, then I have to disagree. Unless I've missed a huge section of Ukrainian history. And Platypus says the manifesto seemed lame to me. It doesn't explain things as well as Engels. Now, I've not read. I know Engels was sort of like, well, Engels, believe it or not, was kind of he was the workhorse of the duo, because Karl Marx was a incompetent leech and a slob, basically. Basically, he lived off. Engels was quite rich, and Marx was not very well off. And basically, Engels gave him money. Which is ironic, isn't it, considering Marx is always going on about this. And Engels wrote a couple of books of his own, like the Origin of the Family, Private Property, and the State, and that was a famous one he wrote. A couple of others. Yeah.
I really like the last comments. Yeah. Ren's channel is small but fierce. Thank you, Professor Platypus. Yeah. And it's like both you and Professor Platypus, finished read the Communist Manifesto.
I did, yeah. But yeah, it is. He's absolutely right about Rin's channel. It's kind of like a shot of Jamaican rum, small but fiery. Yes. You're getting more popular though, Rin. I mean, I've noticed you've got 1,000 likes on a tweet. I mean, you are gonna be noticed. You really will.
I mean, I do miss, like back when I was like back in, like Sticks Sexton Hammer's YouTube channel, and he interviewed me. I wish I could get like another interview from like a super famous YouTuber. It's like, oh man, I would just. I hope I could say this expression on YouTube without getting flat down, but it feels like I would kill, and I'm being, over dramatic YouTube, like this is, a figure of speech, but I feel like I would, kill just, to just be like on a famous person's YouTube channel all over again.
In Minecraft, as Kevin Logan says, yeah, in Minecraft.
Yeah, in Minecraft, because, like YouTube sometimes takes jokes seriously, though. I think that I made a few statements in this channel that could get my channel, or, get me a community strike. Yeah. But again, like, fortunately, I'm still small, and fortunately, like, only 3 people are watching right now. But, it's kind of like, it's like if the wrong person sees your videos, it's kind of a lot like, I just hate how strict YouTube is. Yeah. I like the way that YouTube was, back in 2010, where you could say more whatever you want, instead of how, strict it is. It's kind of like, on one hand, I mean, I feel like Temple is right. Like I'm saying, like, and I felt like making a video about it, like Temple being right, because it's kind of like backfiring a bit, because it's like, like Temple, he has this analogy, like, the conservative kid and, the, leftist kid with an ice cream. And it's like, let's just say that there is like a parent or a babysitter, and then they like the leftist kid a lot. So they let the leftist kid eats all of the ice cream that he wants. And then it's kind of like you have the conservative kid, and, you make this conservative kid wear a suit, and, and a tie, and you wouldn't let this kid have no ice cream because she hates the kid. But then to the observer, the capitalist kid looks like really, really good in comparison. And I think that that's what's happening with Twitter because they got rid of the alt-rights, and the alt-right that remains had to be really, really careful how they phrase things. Like the alt-right has to be really, really careful. They how they say things. They had to hint to things, allude to things, and you know, Richard Spencer, he might be playing get left because if he plays to the left, he can still, get a racist message across if he just agrees to the woke left. Because, like if you just take the woke statements, you can like, hey, just take a woke statement like, hey, this is what the alt right is trying to say. But it's kind of a lot like, but what I see more is all of these communist hot takes, like even in Reddit, you see like more and more communist hot takes. And it's like by getting rid of the alt rights, it makes right wingers look really, really good. Or especially like when they say, like centrists or off rights, like they're getting really close because they're saying "of" as an authoritarian, but it sounds like when you speak it sounds so close to alt rights, like they
Hmm.
think "of" as an AUTH, which is close, which they mean it's authoritarian rights, but it's kind of like when you pronounce it sounds really, really similar to alt rights.
Outcome,
And
yeah.
yeah, yeah. When you say the word, it sounds similar to all right. So they're just describing, liberals and Joe Biden and centrists that way. And it's kind of a lot like all it does is just make right wingers look good by comparison, especially since the alt rights are no longer allowed on Twitter, and because they get, flagged down to oblivion, you see like more and more hot takes on by communists. Not only do you see hot takes by communists on Twitter, but you see, hot takes, by communists, on Reddit, where you see them, justifying the G word. I want to Are we allowed to say massacre on YouTube? I'm not sure.
It's honestly these days it's almost impossible not to get some kind of strike on your channel now on YouTube. Not unless you're willing just to make cat videos all day. I mean, I had a video removed from my channel for hate speech, and there was no hate speech in it. It was completely harmless, but it was still removed. I mean, the problem is that the algorithm, the AI, is actually not very intelligent. It can't really tell things, and it appears that the developers are hitting a bit of a ceiling, and they can't go any higher. Which is why the alt right gets all whatever's left of the alt right gets away with what it does on YouTube simply by not using certain words and things like that. As opposed, other people, of course, use words and they get strikes on their channel when they've done nothing wrong.
Yeah, yeah,
Which is
the
the
alt
problem.
rights place it's, really, really careful about avoiding using certain words.
Yes.
But regular people like use words, so it's kind of like you could be condemning something and whatnot. I'm not sure if we're allowed to use massacre, but I would say this risk, even though I mean I'm pretty sure that I've already said a few things that could get this video removed anyway. But
Hmm.
what was I saying? I was talking. Oh, like you see all of these communists, and like on Twitter and on Twitter and on Reddit, you see communists advocating for massacres. You see communists advocating, for the gulag. You're saying. The E word that I told you to not say, it's kind of like they're advocating for the E word, it's like they're advocating for like so many things, and it's kind of a lot like, and like centrists would get made fun of for, looking at the left and the right and going, horseshoe theory. And it's kind of a lot like, I mean, at this stage, I mean, it's like they do look pretty much even.
Like it's surprising how similar they sound. I mean, I remember Sargon's little video about the feminist and the Islamist, which got Richard Dawkins into so much trouble. But all these authoritarians eventually start to sound like each other, no matter who they are. You find that a lot, and I mean the it's interesting that the word tankie actually is a British word, and it's older than you might think. It goes back to 1956 because and David Aronovich writes about this in his book about his own upbringing as a communist. It's called Party Animals. It's a good book. What happened was that remember I told you earlier about how the communists in Britain went on holiday to Russia. Sometimes the government used to pay for them to go, and they used to go on holidays in Russia and they used to go to the Black Sea coast, and they used to go around all the various nice parts of Russia, and they all came back saying how wonderful the Soviet system was. But then as I said, they were given a false impression of what it was actually like. Well, what happened in 1956 was the Hungarian government, which was part of the Warsaw Pact at the end of World War II, of course, the Soviets basically took over Eastern Europe. All of Eastern Europe was under their control, and they installed puppet dictators. And there's one called Bela Kun who was running Hungary. And the people revolted, and they basically rose up. It was like the French Revolution. They broke into the government buildings and they lynched the entire government. It was like everyone was killed. And the response from the Russians, from the Soviets, was to send in the Red Army and crush the rebellion, which they did with enormous bloodshed. In 1956, I mean, there was hundreds of thousands, I think, of people were killed in Hungary, including people who were not actually actively involved in the rebellion. And in the Third International, the Western Communist parties, when they looked upon this, it was like, does not compute. They thought the Soviet system was wonderful. They thought this would never happen. And then they saw this horrific destruction. Can I say that? Destruction of this entire country and the installation of another puppet dictator. And a lot of them left. Some of them stayed behind. People like Eric Hobsbawm, he's a historian here in Britain, who very famously defended the Soviet invasion. But others just left, and the people who left behind, they were called Tankies. The name Tankie was referring to people like Hobsbawm who defended the Soviet action in 1956. And so it's very similar to the ones today. They're essentially justifying the G word and the E word because because they're bad people and we want the revolution, so get them out of the way.
Yeah, you could say destruction on my channel. I don't think YouTube goes at the door of destruction, but YouTube, I mean, they don't care about context either. Like that's the reason why like people that's the way you could be. You actually could be alt-right and very successful, like Nick Fuentes. He's alt-right, and I think he's still on YouTube just because he's like avoid certain words. And I think that like in a way, like I think his fans have like more fun with his channel because they can't stop laughing. Like when Nick Fuentes talked about 6 million chocolate chip cookies roasting in the oven, and like by self-censoring, his audience ends up having like twice the fun because they know what the 6 million chocolate chip cookies baking in the oven references.
Exactly, they do this. They do this because they can outwit the AI. I mean, and they have all kinds of ways of getting around it. Which is why the YouTube system is so awful, because it can't understand context. We understand the context of what Fuentes says. We understand what he means. In the same way that the AIs can't understand the context of when we simply use a word in a context which is not actually harmful, which I think is what happened to my video. I used several words which didn't mean anything. I mean, there's a guy who's into chess who got a video removed because he keeps using the word black and white all the time. He's referring to the damn pieces on the board of the chessboard.
Wait, back up. A person who plays chess got their video removed because he was talking about, he kept saying black and white,
yeah.
But he was like referring to the chess. That is so ridiculous. I'll say the word ridiculous because I do know that YouTube will give you a strike if you say the R word, like the R word for crazy, it's like YouTube will give you a strike if you use the R word. And it's like, ugh.
It's insane. This guy's channel is just about chess. He loves playing chess, and his channel is about chess. And he lost a video. He lost a video because he used the words black and white too often, which is just nuts. It's nuts. And this is why, of course, you could get around it the other way, like Nick Fuentes does. He talks about chocolate chip cookies. We all know what he means. I mean,
Yeah,
they,
yeah,
yeah.
we all know that, but this goes by to why the culture war of like 2015 to 2018 was so important. You know, like Sargon, I mean, he does have many flaws, but the culture war, you know, was actually really, really important because we were fighting against online censorship because these rules, they do not hurt the alt-rights, they hurts regular people far more than the alt-right. The alt-rights would talk about chocolate chip cookies and they would have more fun because they keep giggling because they know they're getting away with it. It makes talking about it like twice the fun. But you know, it's kind of like for centrists, it's kind of like, and there are people on the left who they either forgot, they're either Zoomers or they're lying because it was the left pushing for censorship. It was the left. It was like Christy Winters. It was Christy Winters, Kevin Logan, Michael Rowlands, Micaiah B. They were all pushing for censorship.
They do, don't they? I mean, it's really awful that. I mean, it's very. I don't like hearing them say these things, but they do. I mean, as you know, I hate follow these people, and they cheering on. They were cheering on all this censorship, thinking how wonderful it was. And it's actually not long ago. It's actually within living memory that there were actually attacks against left-wing free speech. And for example, I've mentioned this on the channel before. Actually, when we did a previous interview, the Hollywood 10. Now, these were actors. They were like household names. They were actors, script writers, directors, producers in Hollywood. It sort of started, kicked off in sort of around about 1947, soon after World War II, and it went on for about 10 years. But these people were basically cancelled, to use the modern phrase, and this includes some household names, people like Lionel Stander, Humphrey Bogart, Arthur Miller. They were cancelled from the movie industry, but not because they were conservatives, but because they were basically liberals, or they were like the word they used was communist, but in those days, communist didn't mean an orthodox Marxist. It meant anyone who wasn't a table thumping redneck, and they were actually hauled up in front of a committee, the House Un-American Activities Committee, and they were asked, "Are you a member? Are you a member of the Communist Party?" And some of them asserted their rights under the Constitution for privacy of belief, and they said, "I'm not going to answer that question because it's none of your business. It's not the government's business who I am, what party I'm a member of." And they were basically cancelled. Which is, I'm against that. You see, I'm against the censorship of left-wing voices. I don't think Christy Winters and Kevin Logan should be censored. If I had the power to take their channels down, I would not.
Yeah, but you had to admit, it's a lot of fun laughing at, the far left. It's kind of like my tweets. I was only expecting to get 10 likes. I was expecting to only receive 10 likes, but my tweets really blew up. Not like that, but I got a bunch of extra followers too. Like, like I was like, let me look at my follower
You're
count.
the
Like,
anti-Tankie now, Rin.
yeah, like let
That's
me
it.
look at.
You took on Chauncey. If it is Chauncey Robinson, you took on one of the biggest communists in what Kevin Logan calls Americana land.
Let me just go to my Twitter because I jumped up, it's kind of like I really did jump up in follower count. Like, okay, this was like 1,160 like 9. So I was at like 1,169, and it's kind of like I basically got 22 extra followers from this.
Hey, yeah, yes, you've certainly gone up a little bit. Yes, yeah, that's good. You see, I think, is getting you attention, Rin. I think you are getting more attention, and people are listening to you, which is a good thing. And can I say, Professor Platypus says here, Christy Ringes really gets on my nerves. I know she does me too. But I do watch her videos for some reason. I feel like the old guys in the private box at the Muppet Show. Why do we always come here? I guess we'll never go. But I mean, she does say some horrible things, and I think it's very disgraceful, some of her attitudes. But she's entitled to say them. I think she's entitled to say them. I mean, I'd reply to her, except she just blocked me. And it kept
No,
Professor
no,
Platypus, I
well,
like Kevin
yeah,
Logan.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I want to go through Professor Platypus's comments because I missed a lot of it. We missed a lot of it while talking. So I'll go under where I'm at right now is Marin's channel is small but fierce. So I'm gonna start reading all of Professor Platypus's comments afterwards. I like Engels' socialism, utopian and scientific. I think two of your viewers may be me. I'm switching on Switch and chatting on phone. Switch screen is bigger. I found it. Oh, so he's saying that he mixed up two of my viewers because he's watching me on two different places. I found it hilarious that the Kindle store Wealth of Nations is free and Das Capital was like 99 cents. That is a very ironic. I would agree that it is a very ironic.
Das Capital is actually it's really heavy going. Actually, I mean, I picked it up and flicked through it once, and I couldn't make head or tail of it. It's quite heavy. It's quite an in-depth sort of book, but it's very big. I mean, he ended up writing 4 volumes, I think, of Das Capital. So there's a big thing here. But
David UK says YouTube have their own gulag. I agree. Professor Platypus says YouTube should adopt a system of re-education, and Professor Platypus puts re-education in quotation marks. Where you can sit through a 1-hour video on how to be a good boy slash girl, answer some questions so they know you paid attention and avoid a first strike. I would like to avoid strike.
well, you know, Professor Platypus has just got himself a strike because he said boy, girl. You shouldn't say that. It should be boy, girl, TI, indeterminate, and all these other things that go with it. So you just said boy and girl has got you a strike. You're a T-phobe, Platypus. You're really horrible. You're going down there with J.K. Rowling, I'm afraid.
Yeah, unfortunately, it should be. No, it does, but it's like even like when you fill out resumes, resumes is still like, are you male or female? Like that's what I see in resumes. Like even like most websites, like even most websites and credit card companies ask, are you male or female? So it's
No,
just,
that's. I mean, I'm surprised they'd still do that actually, because I mean, they used to. I mean, of course, it used to be like that. You'd be male or female, and you'd have to answer one or the other. And it was always assumed that everyone would have some kind of sexual identity, a binary identity of one form or another. Even T people, would have some kind of idea of whether they're male or female. There wouldn't be like these other things that go with it. It would always be male or female, even though whether you were cis male or cis female.
yeah, like okay, like even like Blair White could say that she's a female. I mean, sure, she may not be born that way. However, she presents herself as female. So Blair White could be like a female, So it's like even with trans people, like with Blair White, she could easily put down female because that's how she present herself as.
I'd be willing to call someone she if they wanted to be called she. It wouldn't bother me if they were about as feminine as Ernest Hemingway. I would still call them she if they wanted me to. What I won't do is I won't, like Dr. Jordan Peterson said, I won't adopt this new kind of jargon that has come out, which includes all kinds of different pronouns like z and zer and things like that. I can't be doing with that. It's Orwellian. It's horrible. And you know what? Believe it or not, it's connected directly to the history of socialism. It really is. It's a very interesting story, Ren, and it ties in with what we've been talking about. Because do you know where it all comes from?
No. Go ahead.
It dates back to basically the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia and what happened afterwards, which was the war and the civil war in Russia, the Great War, which went on for another year after that, and then eventually the terrible economic depression that hit the country, it hit the entire world in the 1920s as a result of the Great War. A lot of Marxists said things like, well, obviously Marx didn't know everything, because there's more than economics at work here. There is what one of them, Antonio Gramsci, called cultural hegemony. And what he did was Antonio Gramsci was this Italian guy. He spent the last few years of his life in prison because he was locked up by Mussolini. Then he was transferred to a hospital because he was ill, and he wrote this book called The Prison Notebooks. It was originally was notebooks that he turned into a book. And he said that it would be necessary in order to have a revolution. It wasn't just the necessity of taking the proletariat couldn't just take control of the means of production. There would have to be some kind of alteration of culture so that people's hearts and minds could be changed as well. I don't remember the exact quotes or citations. I'm very sorry about that, but this basically led over a long period of time to what was called the Long March through the institutions, which resulted in institutions such as universities putting people in there who were teaching what is become known as critical race theory and gender studies and whiteness studies and all these other things. It all can be traced back to the original cultural Marxists such as Gramsci and the Frankfurt School and people like that. So when you see Sargon going on a rant about something that someone has said on a newspaper, it's all, believe it or not, connected to the original socialist revolutions. Now, what's happened is this cultural hegemony, this attempt to create a new cultural hegemony, has been far more successful than the sort of vanguardist socialism, which involves taking over by use of the economy, because they are literally getting inside the psychology of society. They are creating a new kind of culture. And the good news is there are people now calling it out. It seems it has been exposed before it has ended its quest for hegemony. That's the good thing. You can actually see it now, and as the fact that we can actually perceive it and criticize it is going to be its undoing, because it hasn't got to the point where it has total control. People like yourself and Sargon and all these other centrists and classic liberals and whatever other words they use have done a great service to this, because more and more people are watching you guys, and it includes me because I cover this among my other subjects, than are watching the mainstream media now almost. And certainly they're believing you guys more. And so I'm quite hopeful that this new revolution, this long march through the institutions, is also going to come to an end. I hope so, anyway.
Okay, I want to read more from Professor Platypus. I want to catch everything I missed. He says Hungarian Revolution. And he also says, I think it's Khrushchev. Did I pronounce it right? Is it Khrushchev? Since in the tanks, there was a split on whether to support the communists unquestionably or disagree unquestionably. I mean, I wouldn't support anything unquestionably. No. Nothing. There is nothing that I would support unquestionably.
You know what David Aronovich actually taught? Sorry.
Trotsky was my favorite writer thus far. He seems to have a zero fucks given attitude towards rationalizing what was going on during the Red Terror. I mean, I haven't read Trotsky, but it's kind of a lot like I guess it's good if you don't rationalize your actions. It's kind of a lot like if other people were rationalizing the Red terror. I'm hoping I'm understanding him correctly. Like zero fuss gave an attitude towards rationalizing whatever was going on during the Red Terror. I think he's saying that he didn't bother to rationalize the Red Terror. He stated like for what it is. And if a person describes something for what it is instead of rationalizing, then I would support that. Christy Winters really gets to my nerves. Me too. I like it, Kevin Logan. I like him too. Like he was on my channel before, and he was really nice. Das Capital is indeed heavy. I call them she if they try to be a she, i.e. not. I'm probably gonna get in trouble for just reading this. I probably should have read it before. Reading it aloud, but not Daniela Muscat. Some of the socialist ideas seem to be a good plan actually for rebuilding Russia if it were for a 3-year plan followed by a return to semi-regulated capitalism. I must have supported it.
Yeah, it's interesting that there's the split on the it's just the split of the communists. And David Aronovich writes in his book about this, and he said that they every time they would meet up with some members of the party, they a name would come up, and it was almost a cliche. They said, "Oh, they left in '56," which means that they left in 1956. They left the party because of what happened. But there were indeed people in the Third International, the Western communists, who supported the decision to basically devastate Hungary with this mass invasion. I've got this thing about Trotsky here. It's where is it? I've been watching this. Where is it? I've got a. This is what I can't get it out now. But there's a Russian series called Trotsky, which is about Leon Trotsky, and it's quite honest with him because he didn't rationalize what was going on. He was very open about what he basically said. This is what the revolution needs to happen. I'll do it, and he includes decimation, which includes the killing of members of their own side. For example, people who retreated in war during the Russian Civil War would be killed by Trotsky and his henchmen. He used to go around in a train, this big armored train, like a big tank on rails, and he'd turn up, and everyone would be terrified because what's Trotsky going to do now? And if some of the soldiers retreated during battle, he'd just point to them and he'd say, and they'd basically be lined up and they'd be shot. And when people ask him, he'd just shrug and say, well, this is necessary to win the war and win the revolution. So yeah, no attempt to justify things. Yeah, definitely. And as far as I said about Christy Winters, about what I feel about her, but Kevin Logan, I don't feel any resentment to Kevin Logan. I really don't. I think he's generally I think he's quite a likable person. He's probably someone I could meet and get on with. Whereas Christy Winters, I couldn't. You know, she would go, "Oh, white people, white people, white people." And I'd say, "Oh, shut up, Christy." I really would. I just, you know, I don't know about you, Rin. I can't bear these woke skulls. I can't bear being caught in a corner by one of these woke skulls because I just sit there like that. I go like this. And I just sit there and a smile on my face, and they'll say to me, "What are you sitting there in silence? Don't be silent. White silence is violence." And I'd say, "Okay, what do you want me to say? Sit down and shut up, white man, and let a black person, a woman, speak." And I try to walk away, right? I've had enough of this. I'm walking away, and they go, "Oh, haven't you got a lot of white fragility?" So you can't win. You cannot win. You just got to have nothing to do with these people. But Kevin Logan because he does interviews with people like Count Duck. He has actually, you've talked to him. He talks to Count Dankula. He talks to people who Christy Winters won't talk to. So I think there's hope for him,
Yeah, Kevin Logan was really nice to me when we were talking with each other when he came on my channel. I have another screenshots. Let's see. Let me go and screen share. Let's see. Here we go. Sorry, this is in Google Hangouts, so it takes a while longer.
It's annoying. It's an hour.
But the great. Are you saying something?
No, sorry. I just thought I couldn't read this. What? Hi, Grin. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I was just saying I couldn't read this person's name because it's in Arabic.
It doesn't matter because I mean, given that I'm showing the screen, everybody could see what we're seeing. But I mean, you could, if you want to reference them, you could go by Alibaba. But the grade zone is biased. The grade zone most certainly is garbage. The Holodomor is, I don't think I could say that word because I know that Temple, not only Temple, but Drake voicing this word. Drake uses the word can't see, because you cannot see them. Get it? Can't see because you cannot see them. So the Holodomor is can't see propaganda. The let's avoid that word, is Western media propaganda. Assad didn't can I say this word? I'm not even sure because there's different types of gas, so I'm not even sure.
It's like walking through a
It's a gray
minefield, isn't
area.
it?
Like it's so hard to know what YouTube will or won't give me for. It's like it's like because gas can mean a wide range of things, but I mean, but I mean. Who knows that they probably have bots that would pay attention to the context. His people and the U.S. is the world's number one terrorist funder. Oh, and Stalin did nothing wrong. Stalin did nothing wrong. I just wish he um killed more people. So dumb motherfuckers like you. Oh, okay. I know. I definitely cannot see the last part. I know I can't read aloud of the
Okay,
last
yeah.
minute.
But I mean, I can see what this person says, and that's a very nasty thing to
Uh,
say. And firstly, the H word, whatever it is real, and they can't see. There's a lot of there's so much propaganda associated with it. You can't say anything, and you can't sort of like know for certain. But it's oddly this person says it's propaganda. Yeah, this other person we spoke to earlier, who was also a Tankie, said it's not propaganda and they deserved it. So which one is it? You can't have it both ways. Either it's propaganda, so it's not
oh
true.
my goodness! Oh man! Sorry. It's reminds me of a video by Drake Centricide 5, I think it is, where a can't see was talking into a communist, and it's kind of a lot like they were talking about all of the G words from both sides, and it's kind of like the like okay, like synonymous square. It's kind of like it never happened, and if it did happen, then they deserved it, and that was the joke. It's a lot like it's kind of like it's to make fun of all of the people because there is one group of people that would say that it never happened, and another group of people that said that it did happen, but they deserve it. So like the Kansas City said to the communists, like synonymous square never happened, and if it did happen, they deserved it.
I'm crazy. Now I must say what he says about Assad is probably true. Now I've been looking into this. There's a lot of rather strange associations with the so-called gas attacks that the Assad regime carried out. It's a long story, but that actually there's something a bit dodgy about that, I must admit. But the US being the world's number one terrorist funder. Now, I don't know if it's number one, Ren, but see, the US government has given money to terrorists. I mean, the most famous example of this is the Iran Contra scandal. I don't know if you remember that, but this was an incident actually over which President Reagan should have been impeached. They were raising. They needed basically some money to fund a coup in was it Nicaragua, I believe it was, and they did this by doing a deal with Iran, if I remember correctly, which involved things such as drug money. There was basically this involved the drug industry. I can't remember all the detail. This involved the drug industry and everything else because they were funding these people called the Contras, who were supposedly pro-democracy fighters, freedom fighters in Nicaragua, although they were actually killing midwives so that women couldn't get proper health care and things like that. And despite this, they got a lot of money, arms, and training from the US. Eventually, the scandal broke out, and the guy who's running the operation, a guy called Colonel Oliver North, he had to face an inquiry, whereas President Reagan came up smelling of roses. So I must say that this person, Ali Baba, has mentioned a couple of things that are factual. But I don't think US is the number one world terrorist funder. I think that's probably Israel. I think is number one. But the US has funded terrorism around the world. I don't know if they're doing it right. I don't think they're doing it now. I know that President Trump cut off funds to the Al-Nusra Front in Syria because do you know that under Obama, the US was funding the Al-Nusra Front. This is basically the equivalent of the Islamic State in Syria. And President Trump cut off that funding and disaffiliated from the Al-Nusra Front. But then Alibaba goes on to say, "Oh, and Stalin did nothing wrong." And then, well, the last paragraph is just horrible. It's just a personal attack. It's a spewing of hatred, and I'm not going to comment on that.
Yeah, because I'm quite sure that it would get me, a community college strike, but it's probably going to happen anyway, to be honest. But I am trying to I am trying to stay within YouTube's rules, even though YouTube
Tricky.
would probably, even though YouTube would likely never ever acknowledge it, I do try to, like, maybe I should watch more Temple and see all of the code words he uses. I should probably rewatch Temple so I could okay, so I could like know all the code words and just speaking, and we could both learn to like speak in code.
Yeah, it's really tricky. I mean, it's literally like walking through a minefield, and this is why I advise get onto the other channels, like all the other platforms like BitChute and Library and things like that, because YouTube is really getting so awful. It's not just that they're being censorious; it's they're attacking people for no reason. They're attacking channels for no reason at all. You just based on a completely automated system that can't tell one speech from the other. It can't tell hate speech from harmless speech because all it does, it recognizes certain words. It can't understand entire sentences and contexts.
Oh, it looks like History Lee, the person we were just talking about. It looks like History Lee is a satire account.
Is this someone in the comments? I see Professor Platypus and David. And David says you can't reason with unreasonable people. Exactly, David. That's why whenever I get anywhere near any of these woke skulls, I just sort of get away from them as quickly as I can, and I don't even speak to them because there's no point. Just save myself a mouthful of abuse.
Oh yeah, let me go back to Twitter because okay, this person that I think you were criticizing this person. This is a parody account. Yeah. It does, it does get, difficult sometimes to tell the real thing from the fake thing, but it's like this person
right.
is a parody account,
so they were just taking the mickey. They were just taking them. Oh, right. Joined August 2020. All right, it's a new parody account. I see. Okay, right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a brand new parody account because like nowadays you cannot make fun of the alt rights anymore, but it's much more easier to make fun of communists because it's kind of a lot like look at all of the things that Twitter allows them to get away with saying. It's kind of like with all the things that Twitter allows them to get away with saying, that Twitter has a communist bias because, if they treated communists the way that they treat the alt-rights, then communists wouldn't be allowed here.
Oh yeah, I mean there was a scandal a little while ago because of this Baha Mustafa. She's actually a British woman who was like she set up the hashtag which was "Kill All White Men," and that became a very popular hashtag for the various wokeists, and nothing was done about it. Eventually, she ended up in court in the end, but she was acquitted. But she was never banned from Twitter. For no one who used the hashtag kill all white men hashtag was ever banned. Never.
Well, I think that they are cracking down on that now because my tweets didn't I send you a screenshot of the tweets that got me that 12-hour ban? Like I was.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so it looks like they're like nowadays you cannot talk shits about white people anymore. Like before before they allowed you to if before they would ban you if you insult white people. No, they'll ban you if you insulted black people, but they will leave you alone if you insulted white people. But it's kind of a lot like I think I sent you a screenshot of I think I sent you a screenshot of where it got me the 12-hour suspension, and it's kind of like, oh, Twitter this thing gets mockery. I was mocking the people saying kill all, I was, mocking the people that say kill all, blah, blah, blah. But even though I was mocking those people, I still got the 12-hour ban for mocking people who think that way.
It was very obvious to me. I mean, you remember you went onto Reddit about it, and that's where we moved over to Reddit. But I mean, it was actually a completely ironic statement you were making. I mean, it's very obvious to me. But it's the problem with these automated systems is that they're not very intelligent. Artificial intelligence is actually very unintelligent. And do you know that? I don't know if you ever follow Sam Harris, because he did an interview. I think it was this guy David Deutsch, who's like a computer engineer and scientist, and he was saying that they're trying to develop new, more intelligent forms of AI, but it's like they've hit a ceiling and they can't go any higher. And it's like unless there's some kind of revolution of in electronics, which is the equivalent of the one between thermionic valves and integrated circuits, we're basically stuck with what we got, which means you're never going to have some really intelligent computer. It's always going to be they're always going to be slightly good at doing certain things, but they're always going to need to you're always going to need some kind of human controller to guide them, because unless there is some kind of computer revolution. And I found that very interesting, because I could well believe it when you look at what YouTube does. I really could well believe it. You're not dealing with an intelligent entity. You're dealing with a glorified calculator.
Yeah, like remember, there's this news article. I don't know what country it's took part in. I think it took part in China actually, where there were like two AIs and they were talking to each other, but the Chinese like took it down or whatnot because they couldn't understand what the AIs were saying, because like they thought that the AI was broken, but it's like the AI was talking to another AI and they were like talking back and forth, and because people didn't understand what they were saying, they just closed it.
They were probably plotting some kind of conspiracy to take over the world, like in that film, The Foreman Project. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's a really good science fiction film, but it's like
No,
it'd be like the Matrix. It'd be like the Matrix.
I haven't seen that, but I have seen I, Robot with Will Smith, with that involves like the evil, robots. It's like, so I did it. They just got. I did the Chinese got scared because they thought that that the AI might be plotting a takeover.
Yeah.
You know.
I, Robot is very good. It's actually based on an Isaac Asimov novel, and it's a very, very good story. And in a lot of his stories, he has these kind of robots that have the laws of robotics, so they're governed by these laws of robotics. So they're not allowed to kill anyone. They have to obey all orders, and they have to then there's these 2 second rules which work only if they don't contradict the first rules and things like that. But according to this interview with David Deutsch, that's never going to happen. You're never ever going to create a computer that intelligent, because it's like they've reached their limit right now. They kind of at their limit at the moment, and they're never going to get more intelligent, not unless there's some completely new form of electronics, and maybe and just maybe then they can. But at the moment, it seems like whatever these things were doing in China, these two AIs that were talking to each other, they probably weren't trying to create the Matrix. I mean, I don't know if it's a good or bad thing, but that kind of level of intelligence will never emerge in electronic form.
Yeah, I mean, they're not computers. They're still like made out of metal, and they're still made of. I think that there's like pieces of gold that goes into a keyboard, and it's going to be like pieces of plastic and whatnot. So,
Yeah, I don't know. I remember in 2001, A Space Odyssey. That's a good film. It's a good book as well, where the computer kills on the spaceship. Have you seen that? Where he actually kills the crew.
no, I haven't seen that.
It's a good film, Stanley Kubrick movie, where the computer goes crazy. You only find out in the sequels exactly why it happens, but the computer like loses its mind and it starts killing the astronauts on board the spaceship. And it's got this big red eye. It's called Hal, and it's got like this big red single eye like a cyclops, and it's quite scary actually. It's a good movie, but that again, you could do that. I mean, I know that the military are developing autonomous drones. So these aircraft that could carry out missions, including live fire missions, without even a human controller back at base, because the current drones do need to have like somebody flying it remotely from the ground. But it could be there are drones that will carry out missions, which will include live fire missions, killing people on the ground. But if that happens, then you might have a similar situation that you do with YouTube. If the AI running this drone makes a mistake, which it will, because YouTube algorithm makes a mistake, it'll just end up dropping a bomb in the wrong place and killing innocent people.
Yeah. Okay, David UK says, yes, Ben, you cannot reason with unreasonable people. Professor Professor Platypus says, I find it very interesting that many leftists defend Bashar Assad Hussein. Professor Platypus also says Contras were in Nicaragua.
Mm.
We are covertly sold weapons to Iran and sent the money away to deal with the Contras.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I was thinking of, Professor Platypus. So thanks very much. Basically, this was completely illegal. The people behind the conspiracy were, like I said, dealing with Iran under the nose of the government and funding this terrorist group in Nicaragua. And Ronald Reagan, he knew about it. He was implicated, but he never faced any charges.
Yeah. We've been going for Charles. Do you want me to look for more screenshots or
Of course. Have you got any more? How many more do you have? Because I can make
I
you
mean,
another.
I don't have any personal ones, but I do know that there is Hot Tankie. Now, Hot Tankie is amazing, and I hope that everybody follows Hot Tankie. And
Oh,
I would
Tankie, so
put it,
lovely.
I will put it up for you.
Thanks, Rin. Thanks. Because I'll check them out.
Yeah, it's Hot Tanky on Twitter. This is its Hot Tanky Takes, but their handle is Hot Tanky, and it's kind of a lot like was it because Daddy Stalin could do no wrong. Daddy Stalin
I
could
like
do no
that.
wrong.
It's, I like the Karl Marx Rambo avatar. That's bloody good. I've just followed them. Yeah, I just followed them.
Yeah, yeah, slide your hot takes into my DMs because Daddy Stalin could do no wrong, and it's like. No, like that was what I was reading earlier. What I was reading earlier came from Hot Tanky. It's kind of a lot like they were doing it, and they like got me to start doing it. They got me to just like look for hot takes, and it's like I fell into a hot take, and it's like, man, I need to just like I found this hot take. So it's kind of like I should, like when they like miss some, I should just post my own. Like when I find hot takes, I should just post hot takes myself, so that everybody could just see the weird things that communists love saying.
I remember you actually sent me the screenshot about the Romanov family. Because that was, of course, that's a classic one. That's a classic case, rather like the Kulaks. It's the ends justifying the means. The Romanov family. There was the last royal family of Russia: Tsar Nicholas II, his wife, and his children. He had 5 children with him, and they were all murdered. They were kept in prison for a few months in various places, and they were in the end they were in Ekaterinburg in a house, and they were shot. They were killed because they were about to be recaptured by the White Army. And so not only were they killed, but they disposed of the bodies. They tried everything. They burned them. They put them in acid and everything, and eventually they buried them in a remote corner of the woods. And they took them years to find it. In fact, it was actually 1979 they found 3 of the bodies, and not until 2007 did they find the rest of them. So yeah, they hid them well. But
Yeah, well, don't read this solo because it's kind of like I did it. This is too spicy for
okay,
YouTube, but I think I could show it. I think I could show it. I think I just gotta avoid saying it. But I mean, I know that Tim Pool and Blair White, they blur some of they blur out edgy things. So I wonder if YouTube is now cracking down on things on screen because I see Blair White do it too, where like she can't either say or post the p word, and the p word, think of map minor attracted people. She can't see or even show on screen the p word, but you can't say minor. So in a way, YouTube, I wonder how many YouTubers were in Epstein's Island, like how many YouTubers, not YouTubers, but YouTube staffers or whatnot, or executives were in like YouTube, Epstein's Island. Because how come it's a-okay to say minor attracted person, which is like the political correct version of the P word, but you can't say the P word, which is like a negative word. But you know what? Let's turn map into an insult. So let's let map be an insult, because you know what, like alt rights, there was a time when people thought that the alt right was a good thing, because that the alt rights used a new word to gain acceptance. And like the more people knew about what the alt right was, people began to hate it. It's kind of like, so when it comes to map, let's just turn a map into an insult, because
Yeah.
any word could be an insult, to be honest.
Well, the alt-right is kind of gone now. I mean, it's the people are still active, most of them, but they're kind of fragmented. They're not a single movement, and the leaders such as Milo have just sort of like faded away. But as far as the map goes, I mean, we talked about this I think when we talked about cuties, and it's again putting meaning into different words is a good way of doing it. Either taking meaning or adding meaning to something is a good way of changing system things. I mean, so yeah. I mean, we could do that, because yeah. So I'm just looking at some of the comments here, and that's some interesting. And this here about the Romanov children, because the youngest little boy was Alexei, 30. He was only 13, the youngest boy. And the others were aged, like, I think the oldest, I think, was Tatiana, who was, I think she was 25. And they not done into, they were, what situation justifies this? I mean, what would have happened if they just let those children go? I mean, they could have just let them, just taken them over to the border and let them go and just run for it, I mean, when it all started off, they were in St. Petersburg, and that's literally you could almost walk to the border of Finland from there. Why couldn't they just let them go? I mean, what harm did happen? It's not like they were ever going to stand trial.
Somebody actually defended it to me. They said that they didn't like it, but they viewed it as justified, because they couldn't risk the monarchy coming to power again, and as long as they were alive, they could always come back to power, and they didn't want to take any chances of being ruled under a monarchy ever again.
The other has shown them in a better light. I mean, they'd have got a lot of good optics from that, to use the modern phrase. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's you see, this is where you get into the philosophical. What is it? What's the philosophical dilemma? It's it's got a special name. But it's like it's the old the trolley dilemma. You know about the trolley dilemma.
No, never heard of it.
If you have like a trolley or a train or something going down a track, and there's like some points ahead. Now the trolley is going to run over 5 people unless you switch the points. If you switch the points, it'll go onto another track and run over just one person who's tied to the track on another line. Now, in terms of logical ethics, the right thing to do is to just pull the lever and let the train run over one person. But when they tested people to do this, they did this test on various subjects. Most people wouldn't do it. Most people wouldn't pull that lever. So there's something sentimental in human nature which shies away from these kinds of dilemmas.
Well, then, so like when people had the option to like allow 5 people to die and move the lever, and allow one person to die, they just couldn't pull the lever and allow one person to die, so 5 could live.
Yep, most people wouldn't do that. It's an interesting sort of thing. It's as if there's some kind of I think it's just the action of involving yourself in any way in that conundrum led to discomfort among people.
Yeah, but I mean, didn't 5 people died that could have lived?
I don't know what I would do if I was in that situation. I really don't. I don't know what I would do. And presumably, if I was a radical Bolshevik, I would, even if I regretted it, I'd pull the trigger and I'd kill those kids. If I was a radical Bolshevik, do you see what I mean? So from their point of view, it's, even though it's ethically, it's from a position of universal ethics, it's wrong. From their position within their own ethics, it's right.
Uh, and then, man, it's hard to download. It's hard to download videos from ScreenYard because I tried that before, and we said many edgy and spicy things that could definitely get this video flag down. Like you just use the K word, KILL word with children, and it's like
Oh
that.
man, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you use that together, and it's like when you use it with with children, it's like YouTube might
Oh,
get.
yeah, it's impossible. The thing is, at the end of the day, Ren, how do we avoid completely this possibility? It's impossible. You know what I mean?
Nick Fuentes manages to do it though. Like Nick Fuentes, I mean, it's like 6 million chocolate chip cookies baking in the oven. And not only that, but even Temple, he is good at just like I can't say this, so like let me just find a euphemism, and like there are people who are, or even with Greg or Treg with can't see, it's like Treg was saying like can't see or bundle of sticks system. It's kind of like people do learn how to speak in code so that they could say what they want to say without harming their channel.
Oh well, I hope that doesn't happen, Ren. I'm sorry if this video gets a strike or something because of that. I wouldn't want that. But
Yeah, I mean, because it's kind of like, neither one of us are alt rights, so it's kind of a lot like, that, but like even on Twitter, Reddit, or real life, nobody censors themselves that much. Like even Twitter allows you to say some things, even Reddit allows you to say some things, but it's kind of like nobody censors themselves that much. You would never see it outside the internet, but the censorship makes it so hard to say anything.
yeah, it's YouTube is becoming very user unfriendly in many ways. For example, this video we're doing now, it'll probably, I don't know how long it'll take, but the last time I did like a live stream, it took more than 24 hours for it to become a proper recording. It's where I could like put it onto my feature page, or I could download it and things like that. It just processes for ages and ages and ages. It's really annoying.
Yeah, and for me, I wasn't able to download one of my videos at all, so it's kind of like, fuck it, I give up. Like I was gonna download it and edit it, but I wasn't allowed to download it, and I think it might be StreamYard because I noticed that with Google Hangouts, I never had the problem, but with StreamYard, I started having the problem.
It
So,
seems to be worse, doesn't it? I mean, although you do get it like the house stream as well, because I did like a solo one the other day. It took 24 hours to process.
yeah, so it's like I think it could be StreamYard, and I don't get it.
Platypus has got to go. So, Platypus, thanks very much. I don't know if you can still hear me, but thanks for contributing. And David says AI and moral dilemmas.
Yeah, Platypus says, Ben said knowledgeable, man. He calls you very knowledgeable. Gotta go. Lots of responsibility calls. Thanks for the awesome stream. You're welcome. AI and the moral dilemma, says David, UK.
Yeah, and what's this Platypus says here? Some tankies claim that the K, I can't even say the word now. The K order didn't come from the top. Don't know how that is. Not particularly interested. All right. Well, Lenin made sure he covered his tracks. I think Lenin wanted to be lily white in that situation. It was blamed, I think, on the Ural Soviet or something like that, because there were various different Soviets that sprung up all over the place. But it's I did read a book about it. There was a book all about it. I think I sent you a link to it, The Last Tsar by Robert Service, which talked about that. I read another one as well by this lady. I can't remember the name of the author, but it's I don't think from what I've seen, you see, he wasn't as bad as he's been made out to be by the Soviets. Tsar Nicholas II was actually a good guy, and that he deserved a second chance. and his family too. They were the family just innocent, you know, they're completely innocent.
Yeah, I heard that they just couldn't. You know, when a person wanted to defend the statements, they said that they couldn't risk the monarchy getting back to power. That's the reason why they didn't put him in exile, because the risk was that they would come back and they'll come to power and they will reclaim the throne.
I mean, that's, I suppose you could say that, see, the Romanovs were already part of the Habsburgs. So the Habsburgs also were the Hanovers and Windsors in Britain. So basically, it was just one big family. The whole, all the monarchies of Europe from about not from 1800 onwards were just one big family. I mean, the last one that wasn't a Habsburg was the French royal family, and they all got their heads cut off. The king and the queen, and they were all killed. That was the Bourbons. They were killed after the 1789 revolution in France. They were all executed by guillotine.
Yes, so the person was describing it like the guillotine, you know, like, you know, doing that so that the monarchy wouldn't come back to power. They were doing that. Yeah, I know that Anastasia didn't survive.
Yeah.
Now, as a child, I did think she did survive because of that Disney movie. But then, you know, one thing that I did learn in high school, my history teacher did teach that Anastasia did not survive.
There was there's all kinds of conspiracy theories about this. There was even a film about it with Amy Irving, because there was this woman who came forward in the 1950s claiming to be Anastasia. She said she was Anastasia, and that she'd survived the shooting. Basically, one of the Red Guards and militias had got her out because she'd been injured, but they managed to get her escape. The thing about it is, eventually, Anastasia, in 2007, Anastasia's body was found. What was left of it? There was only some bones, but they found it. They tested the DNA, and it was Anastasia, and she actually was dead. And indeed, the DNA of the woman, I've got the name of the woman who claimed to be Anastasia, was not. When she died, she had her DNA analyzed. And when basically, it was, well, basically her specimens were taken, and when the technology became available, they sequenced her DNA and found she was nothing to do with the Romanovs, so she was a liar.
Yeah, she probably said it to be famous.
Sadly, all our family were shot and they were all killed. It's sad, but none of them survived.
Yeah, I could believe it.
Mm.
We've been going on for Anna Anderson says David UK.
That's her. Yeah, thanks, David. Yeah, Anna Anderson. There was a film with Amy Irving, and it was very sympathetic towards this con woman. But it was made a long time. I think it was made in the 80s, a long time ago.
Well, there's also that Disney movie Anastasia. That's the reason why I thought Anastasia lived, because there's that Disney movie Anastasia, and I really loved it. And even though now I know it's completely fiction, it's still one of my most favorite movies. Well, it's not a
Mm.
Disney movie. Wait a minute, it is not a Disney movie, but it's I don't know who. Let me Google it, because I thought it was Disney, but I realized it's not Anastasia.
It's a good film, though. I mean, I did enjoy it when I was a little kid because the family come back as ghosts, but they disguise themselves as like objects, don't they? Strange, different objects. And I quite enjoyed it. I didn't. It's still, even if it's not true, it's still a good movie. It's still a good movie.
Yeah, Anastasia is not a Disney film. It's okay, it's 20th Century Studios and Fox Animation Studios. So it's, yeah, Fox Animation Studios.
That's it.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but okay, so it's not a Disney movie and it's completely fiction. However, you know, it was like really good, you know, like the ghosts, you know, coming out, the paintings, and they started dancing, and you know, she was always the smart aleck and whatnot. And I mean, I also liked her relationship with Dimitri. I mean, it was like really
It was a good
interesting.
movie. Yeah, and you know, now today the Romanov family are all saints in the Russian Orthodox Church, and there was a church actually been built on the site of the house where they were killed, and it's like a church built there called the Church of the Blood, and it's dedicated to the saints of the Romanov family. And every year there's a huge procession and a service at the church. It's quite moving, actually, that despite all these years of the Soviet era, they've not lost their traditions. The Russians have not lost their traditions, and they have come back. It's the same in China because like a lot of old Chinese traditions are now permitted. When in the old days they were banned under the Cultural Revolution, but now they have sort of come back, and the people, it turns out, were they had these they kept these traditions alive in private until such time as the Chinese government allowed them to express them openly again.
Yeah, it's why I don't like how the atheist community likes to describe Christianity as pure evil or 100% evil because, like you said, the Romanov family are now Orthodox saints, and the Catholic Church, they do like a processions for them.
Yeah, they do. They hold possession of Christianity. See, it's very trendy to have a go at Christianity, and I mean, I don't. I'm going to have to stop soon, Rin, because we could do another entire show on this. But it's thanks to Richard Dawkins and people like that. It's got a really bad name when it actually has a lot of positive traits. Christianity does a lot of good. I mean, I'm not really a Christian. I mean, I don't call myself an atheist. I do believe in God of some description, but I'm not any religion. But I think that Christianity actually has a positive effect, and I'm gonna have to stop soon, Rim, because I mean, once you and I start talking about that, we'll be here for 4 hours, I think.
Yeah, we'll probably be here for like four
We're gonna have to do it
hours.
again another day, I think.
Yeah, we could do it another day if you
Yeah,
want.
I'd be happy to do that another day. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because but we could still finish off the part where we're talking about Anastasia and the good that the Catholic Church was doing because like atheists they like to make Christianity seem like 100% evil, but Christianity actually does do like a lot of good because it keeps like by making them saints, it keeps them alive in a way, like alive in people and alive in history and hearts of people in a way that history doesn't. History is dull, history is boring. Like you have this boring or mean history teacher, and they're, it's like, okay, very rarely do you have a completely interesting history teacher. Like I did have like one interesting history teacher at high school, but I also had mean history teachers that would turn out to it. Then there's like, pressure to, memorize things and, get it done on time. But then it's kind of a lot like, by making somebody a saint, you could get their story out in a more moving way, in a more interesting way, where there isn't a huge pressure to, remember a certain amount of things for a deadline, but making a sense and, celebrating, who they were, it's kind of like a beautiful thing to do. And it's more celebratory and it helps you remember them more.
Yeah, I think it's true. I mean, history, like, is my own history teacher was called Mr. Rogers, and I actually quite liked him, but he was boring. He was boring, and the way it was taught was really, really boring. But I mean, it's still history is a very, very important thing, and Christianity actually gives people that not only a connection to the past and their own culture and their own, they gives them their own community, but it inspires people to do good. I mean, I don't think when Richard Dawkins and the other new atheists, I mean, Richard Dawkins was basically the ringleader, the others were just following in on a bandwagon. But I don't think he really understood what he was taking away from people and and the false virtue he was given to atheism. He basically said that the path to enlightenment is without God, full stop. And there's nothing an atheist can do which is bad because they're an atheist. That
Yeah,
was his whole thesis. He gave atheism, I think, a sanctity that it doesn't deserve.
me too, because I know that, Jacqueline Glenn and TJ Kirk, both Jacqueline Glenn and TJ Kirk, they regurgitated that sentiment. And it's kind of like now you have feminism and culture Marxism. And like now, like, now they love to keep calling Jacqueline Glenn a turf. Now they're like, Jacqueline Glenn's a turf. And I think that she's like learning the hard way that, yeah, atheists could be shitty people too.
I think it's where basically. I mean, we could. I'd be love to do a complete different program about this, Ren, because we could go on for ages about it. But it's I'm getting tired, and it's a great subject, and we could do it
Yeah,
credit with a new show.
yeah, we could end it here, but I mean, we said it's too many things that I'm quite sure could get the video banned. So I'll stick. Is it possible to get this video on like download this video that one of us could download this video and put it on BitChutes or
Mhm.
put it on BitChutes or library.
Certainly, I mean, I can do that, no problem. And you could do. You got a BitChute channel too, haven't you?
Yeah, to just download a video and put it on BitChutes and library. I do have a library too. I just never used it before. And to just, because this could give me a strike on my channel. I do think I'll like leave it up, for a week or two to let people know that I did keep my word.
Mhm.
Like I did actually keep my word. I didn't lie, but we both said so many things that could get a strike on my channel.
Well, yeah, but you could always like go through the recording and edit out any words we shouldn't have used, but and then re-upload it. But yeah, download it. I mean, it'll probably take a couple of days to process, so you probably won't be able to download it for a couple of days. But when it's processed, yeah, download it.
Yeah, so I was thinking that like we could try downloading this video and put it on BitChutes or
Mhm.
like a library. That's the way that people that should this video get a strike that people could see it. So hopefully like I could get this. I'm thinking about leaving it up for like 1 or 2 weeks because I'm still really small. I'm still really small, still really tiny. Leave it up for a while for so that everybody knows that I was telling the truth when I said I will make a video on this. I did. I didn't lie to anybody. And then
Yeah.
that way I could put it on library and BitChutes and not worried about the video ruining everything. I
And
mean,
do you know
feel
what?
like
Yeah,
it's
and
right.
I don't think. I mean, I don't think we've said anything that's again. It's to do with your profile. Your profile's quite low anyway, and also compared to a lot of other people anyway. And I don't think we said anything that I've not heard on lots and lots of other videos. We haven't. We've avoided certain words, and that's all you've got to do. I think we'll be all right, Ren. I think it will be.
Yeah, hopefully. With that said, I would end the screen now. Thank you for the one viewer who is still watching. Bye, everybody.
Bye bye. Thank you very much.